Which quarterbacks and tight ends should be in your lineup, and who should be on your bench for Week 9 of the fantasy football season? We're about to tell you. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre. He's Chris. We're here to break down every matchup and talk about the quarterbacks and tight ends that should be starting or sitting for you. Now, before we get into that, don't forget there are a lot of teams on bye this week, 6 of them to be exact. We got the Browns, the Broncos, the Cowboys, the Giants, Steelers, and 49ers. Now let's talk about those quarterbacks and tight ends that should be no doubt must starts for you. At quarterback, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. At tight end, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and Dallas Goedert. All right, let's kick it off with a Thursday night matchup. We have the Eagles at the Texans. If you have either position there in Philadelphia, you got Hurts or Goddard, you're good to go, especially in this matchup. Well, on the Houston side, there's Davis Mills. Is there any chance Davis Mills performs against Philadelphia?
Like, almost no chance. An elite defense against a not elite quarterback. No chance I'm starting Davis Mills in any format.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty quick one to say. You can definitely skip Davis Mills in fantasy for this week. Chargers taking on the Falcons. So, well, Gerald Everett, you know what? He might get there, but not a no-brainer. But this has got to be a great spot for him because, number one, it's Atlanta. And number two, there's no Mike Williams.
Yeah, I think you got to start him this week. Got to feel great about him. If you got Gerald Everett, put him in your lineup.
Yeah, definitely. I think a no doubt must start if you have Gerald Everett. On the Atlanta side, Marcus Mariota, I mean, he's putting up some points. Do you think he does it against the Bolts?
I think he can. The Chargers defense, for whatever reason, has not been very good this year. The pass defense hasn't been very good this year. He uses his legs. Not a must start in a 1 QB league, but I think if you need a streaming option, he works, and he's definitely a start in a 2 QB Superflex.
Yeah, I mean, he just manages to get by, not really wowing anybody, but he can run. He's getting some touchdowns. He's at least more interesting than these pocket passing veterans who are letting us down, a.k.a. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Matt Stafford. So I feel like Mariota is startable this week. And then Kyle Pitts. Are we going to get fooled once again into thinking he's back, or do you think that this is the start of something?
I mean, I think this week you got to play him. I'm not ready to buy back into Kyle Pitts every week, must start territory, but this week with so many tight ends out or injured, I think you got to start Kyle Pitts.
I'm starting Kyle Pitts. I don't regret doing it last week. It paid off. Not getting my hopes up, but I do feel like the upside is still there. I'm starting Kyle Pitts. Dolphins at Bears. Let's talk about Tua. Obviously against Detroit. You know, the game script worked in his favor. Had to come from behind. Not saying it'll happen against the Bears, but I am saying I'm starting Tua no matter what because it's the Bears.
Yeah, Tua, I think, has got to be in your lineup this week.
And then Mike Gesicki found the end zone again. It's the Bears. Do you roll with him?
I think this week, again, with so many teams on byes, tight end injuries, I think if you need him, you can stream him.
Yeah, that's as high as I'll go with him. Look, here's the thing. You got guys like Kittle and Freiermuth who aren't playing. Guys like Irv Smith are injured. You know, that limits your options. Some other guys just aren't that interesting. So I think you can start Gesicki if you need him. And then Justin Fields starting to look better, starting to look like what we had hoped for against the Dolphins. Is there a path to fantasy success?
I think there is. And the great thing for Justin Fields is they are designing runs for him. It's not just him scrambling out of the pocket. They are actually calling designed runs for him. This Dolphins defense, I talked about on every video so far, just so bad right now. It's terrible because their offense is so good. This team could be a legit contender, but this defense just killing them. So again, not a must start in a 1 QB league, but as a streamer, he works, and definitely a start in a 2 QB Superflex.
I will say, as a fantasy player, I love the fact that the Dolphins defense is beginning of points because that makes Tua just so much more valuable. But like Fields, this offense has looked different since the bye. They figured things out. They're actually kind of trusting Justin Fields. I think he's one of the strongest streaming options this week, again, with all these teams that are on bye. So I really like Justin Fields. I can't say you have to start him, but if you need a replacement, he's a very strong option. And then Cole Kmet finally did the unthinkable. He caught a touchdown. Does that make him interesting in fantasy?
Kind of like Gesicki on this week. If you need a streamer, sure, because he can catch a touchdown. But man, without a touchdown, giving you almost nothing. So only if you're desperate.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of just one step right below Gesicki. I mean, you could stream him if there's nothing better, but I wouldn't count on him scoring again. Panthers taking on the Bengals. It looks like we might have another week of PJ Walker, who should have won that game for Carolina last week, if not for a ridiculous penalty and missed kicks. But anyways, PJ Walker, what do you feel about him against Cincinnati on the road?
I mean, I feel slightly better about him than Davis Mills, but that's pretty much about it. Not starting PJ Walker.
That's not very good. I mean, yeah, I hear you. Because, look, he was actually not having a great game until the very end there. So I'm not starting PJ Walker, even in a super flex, if I can help it. And then, obviously, if you got Joe Burrow, you're playing him. What about Hayden Hurst at tight end?
Yeah, you got to feel really good about Hayden Hurst for however long Jamar Chase is out. So I think this week, if you got Hayden Hurst, you're starting him.
Yep, like I said, buys, injuries, all this craziness at tight end, and especially Jamar Chase out. I think Hurst enters the top 10 tight end conversation, which isn't saying a lot, but it is saying something that he's worth starting in fantasy. Green Bay headed to Detroit. Can Aaron Rodgers bounce back against a not-so-good Detroit defense?
I mean, if he's going to bounce back, this is the week to do it. Never going to have like a ton of confidence in Aaron Rodgers right now, but I think as a streaming option or in a 2QB Superflex, he's fine if you need him.
This version of Aaron Rodgers is just not anything like last year's. Obviously, Devontae Adams being gone doesn't help. Even in this matchup, I feel like I don't want to get fooled. He's, to me, only an option in Superflex or 2 quarterback leagues. I'd rather take a chance on Justin Fields than Aaron Rodgers. What about Robert Tonyan? Hope for him?
Another guy like Gesicki really needs to score a touchdown. It's the Lions. It could happen. If you need to stream him, with some touchdown upside, you can do it.
I'm still not interested. Look, even with Randall Cobb out, Alan Lazard out last week, we just haven't seen Tonyan emerge as a consistent option. So he's really low on the streaming radar for me. And then we have Jared Goff. What do you think he can do against the Packers?
Probably not a lot. This isn't the Miami defense. Not expecting much from Jared Goff. I'm sitting Jared Goff.
I'm also sitting Jared Goff. Look, I know they did put up some points last week, but when they're getting near the red zone, it's usually Jamal Williams and or DeAndre Swift. I just don't see a path to success for him. Raiders taking on the Jaguars. If somebody really needs a bounce-back game, it's Derek Carr. Does he do it in Jacksonville?
Well, if you watched the Panic video, I said I am never going to recommend starting Derek Carr ever again. I got to stick to my guns. I am not starting Derek Carr.
Man, I mean, look, there was some talk that he's kind of had his bad back, and of course, Adams was not himself, and Waller was out, but still, that was horrible. It was really bad, and now on a road game against a not too terrible defense, so he's only a super flex option for me. And then speaking of Darren Waller, he did miss last week. Not sure what will happen in week 9. If he does play, do you play him?
You kind of have to play him if you have him. Don't love it, but if you have him, you kind of have to.
Yeah, I don't even feel like I have to. So I'd say you can start him, but there are several other tight ends I'd rather have. So it kind of depends on your other options. So to me, he's a start only if you don't have anything better. What about Trevor Lawrence? Do you see any way that he kind of goes off against this Raiders defense?
Goes off seems a little strong, but I will say quarterbacks destroy this Raiders defense, and it's been every single quarterback so far. Even Davis Mills, well, he destroyed him at least as much as Davis Mills can. So I think Trevor Lawrence is a good start this week just because of the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's some chance that he does. And look, he's been taking the ball himself near the goal line lately. They don't have James Robinson anymore, so there is some upside there in terms of running the ball. You can't go too crazy for him, but I'd say he's kind of a high-end QB2 solid streamer if you need one. And then Evan Engram, I mean, who would have thought? He's become a pretty consistent option. How good do you feel about him?
I think you got to feel pretty good about him at this point. I think if you have Evan Engram, you've got to keep him locked in your lineup.
Look, I will say, if I have to choose between Darren Waller and Evan Engram, I'm taking Evan Engram. If I have to choose between Hayden Hurst and Evan Engram, I'm taking Evan Engram. I think he's solidly, kind of that second tier of tight ends. I like him. Colts at the Patriots. You still got Sam Ehlinger at quarterback. Is there a way that he has some fantasy relevance against New England on the road?
No, I know the New England defense has kind of regressed the last couple of weeks, but still, it's Sam Ehlinger. It's on the road. Not putting him in any of my lineups.
You have a guy who's basically a rookie. He's not a rookie, but he basically is in terms of experience. Going against Bill Belichick on the road, there's zero chance I have Ehlinger anywhere. What about Mac Jones? I guess he's still the guy. Can he do anything to interest you in fantasy?
No, Mac Jones is a guy, just no upside really. Doesn't do a whole lot for me. I'm not starting Mac Jones.
To me, Mac Jones, he should be playing in Jacksonville because he's Jag. He's just a guy, right? He's just a guy who has no rushing upside, no path to really boom in any opportunity. So, no, I can do better than Mac Jones. And Hunter Henry, kind of feel the same way. I mean, I doubt that I'll be starting Hunter Henry anywhere, even if I did have him.
No, not starting Hunter Henry either.
Bills taking on the Jets. You got Josh Allen, you're pretty good. You got Dawson Knox, what do you have?
You got a guy who either scores a touchdown or does nothing. So again, one of these guys, you're desperate, you're just looking for a touchdown, you can stream him.
I mean, he did score last week, but there's no guarantee he scores this week. And the Jets defense has been really good this year, so streamable, but that's about it. And then, Zach Wilson. Look, the final stat line looks good because of all the yardage, but the interceptions are what matters the most here. I mean, against the Bills defense, is there any way that you would consider him?
I mean, he's the only quarterback left in a 2-QB Superflex league, and I either have all my other QBs are hurt or injured, and even then I might just flex a positional player. So no, not starting Zach Wilson.
I mean, only Ehlinger, maybe PJ Walker. Those are the only guys I might have below Zach Wilson. So, no, I would definitely pass on him. And then what about Ty Conklin? Just when we thought he was dead and buried in terms of fantasy, 2 touchdowns last week. Does he, now warrant consideration if you need to stream a tight end?
I mean, again, one of these guys that has to score. Coming off a 2-touchdown game, my guess is he's going to have 0 touchdowns this week and probably do nothing. But at least he's involved again. So if you're desperate and you need a streamer, you could probably do worse.
You could always do worse. Look, I mean, he's done it before early in the season. He did it last week. I wonder if Corey Davis being out helped him. Obviously, they had to come from behind. They're definitely going to have to come from behind this week, I feel. So I think Conklin is streamable. But again, I don't want to chase too hard last week's points either. So if you don't have anybody stronger, then you can stream it. Minnesota heads to Washington in the, sort of 3 years later, however long it's been, revenge game for Kirk Cousins. Do you think he puts up points?
I do. I mean, and another good matchup for Kirk Cousins. It feels like every week Kirk Cousins has a good matchup, and then he's just kind of okay. He's kind of good, but not great. I think he'll be good, but not great again this week.
I want to say that this should be a smash week for him, but then I look, he hasn't gone over 2 touchdowns in a game yet this season, despite these great matchups, like you said, despite having Justin Jefferson. It's either 1 or 2 touchdowns, and there's just no ceiling anymore, which I don't understand. And I look at this Washington defense, I feel like this should be a smash game, but I don't think it will be. I think he's, again, streamable, but I have him kind of as just a high-end QB too, and that's as far as I'll go. And then TJ Hawkinson, I mean, he's one of these guys you kind of feel like you can't bench, but you don't love starting either.
Exactly. Don't love it, but you got to start him.
Yeah, if you have him, you probably should start him, but don't expect a whole lot. What about on the other side, Taylor Heineke?
Yeah, never going to start Taylor in a 1 QB league. And look, it is a decent matchup. But I think in a 2 QB Superflex league, he's startable because, he'll chuck it. He'll chuck it down the field to Terry McLaurin and say, please catch the ball. And he'll run a little bit. So 2 QB Superflex only.
I think he's startable in a Superflex, like you said, just because there might be enough volume here having to pass the ball and the running game is just not working. I like him better than some of these other quarterbacks we've talked about, but definitely no consideration in a single quarterback league. All right, when the Seahawks take on the Cardinals, which version of Geno Smith do you expect?
The same version we get every week, about 200 yards and 1 to 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, a guy like in a 1 QB league, he doesn't really excite me, but in a 2 QB Superflex league, he's a solid start.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of become a game manager. He's a safe quarterback, so I feel okay starting him. Again, especially with so many other quarterbacks just busting this year, but not going to get too excited. And you know what the Cardinals do is they fall behind early and then they have to come back, which means that Geno might not have to pass a lot. So he's startable, but, not too exciting. Will Dissly hasn't done much lately. Does he do anything against the Cards?
Maybe, but probably not. I'm not starting Will Dissly.
No, I'll pass on Dissly. Definitely some other tight ends who have more upside, so I'll say no as well. And then the other side, Kyler Murray, getting by with some garbage time production, come from behind production. Is it going to be a similar theme this week?
Probably. I think if you got Kyler Murray, you got to start him.
Hey, got Hopkins back. That's definitely helping him. So I don't love Kyler Murray. He's not your savior in fantasy, but you're probably starting him if you have him. Zach Ertz, I thought he would do better last week. He was okay, but not great. Does he kind of bounce back this week?
Yeah, it's kind of surprising. Like, ever since Hopkins and Rondale Moore got healthy, they've kind of forgotten about Zach Ertz a little bit, which is weird. But I think if you have Zach Ertz, you still got to start him.
He's still one of the more reliable tight end options, and this is a good matchup for tight ends. Of course, just said that last week, but yeah, I'm lowering expectations, but I'm definitely starting him if I have him. Rams taking on the Bucs. Will this turn back into an old-fashioned shootout? Well, I don't know about that, but Matt Stafford in fantasy, do you think he can put up some points?
Not really. He's kind of like Geno Smith, except you're going to get 250 yards and probably 1 touchdown. So, Superflex 2 QB only for Matt Stafford.
Look, I'll say if the Cooper Kupp injury turns into something where they rest him this week, I'm completely out on Matt Stafford. He's looked bad enough, even with Kupp as his safety blanket. So his offensive line is terrible. He can't do anything other than scramble for his life or get sacked. So if Kupp doesn't play, there's no way I'm playing Stafford. If Kupp does play, like you said, he's just Superflex only. Tyler Higbee, he's okay, I guess, but I think he's just kind of a streamer at this point.
Yeah, unless Kupp is out. If Kupp is out, I probably will bump Higbee up a bit, but yeah, at this point, if you need him, you can start him, but not a must start.
Now let's talk about Tom Brady, only fantasy football related. How do you feel about Tom Brady's chances against the Rams?
So, Geno Smith, Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady, they do the same thing every week, except Tom Brady throws for 300 yards and 0 to 1 touchdown. So, again, not a guy I want to start in a 1 QB league, but in a 2 QB Superflex, he's fine.
The thing is, if the Rams aren't putting up points, the Bucs won't have to put up points either. This might turn out to be the most disappointing game because it's been one of the most disappointing sets of teams. But anyways, Brady, I think he's okay. You can start him, but definitely not a must-start anymore. And then Cade Otton is a tight end. He's been all right, but where does he land for you?
Yeah, I'm not starting Cade Otton. Kind of disappointed last week, and then Kyle Rudolph got an end zone target. No, I don't want to start Cade Otton.
I think, he's a guy who's interesting looking ahead, but in this week, I'm not starting him either. Now, when the Titans take on the Chiefs, we still don't know who's going to be the quarterback for Tennessee. It's to be determined. So if Ryan Tannehill is good to go, is he someone who could put up points against KC?
I think so, but only in a 2 QB Superflex league. I'm not starting Ryan Tannehill ever in a 1 QB league, but look, unlike last week, I know he didn't play, but last week, the Titans were able to run the ball 40 plus times, 50 times, like we knew they would. They're not going to be able to do that against the Chiefs. They're going to be behind, and probably behind big. So that gives Ryan Tannehill a little bit of upside, but only in a 2 QB Superflex league.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Tannehill will never be a, set and forget, and is never going to be a guy I would start in a 1 QB league. Maybe they have to push it and pass more because they're down to KC, but still. This is not a team that has enough weapons to really pass it enough, and I think that's a lot of the reason why they're just not passing, because they don't have the options at receiver. So even if Tannehill does play, he's just kind of a desperation play in Superflex. Now, what if it's not Tannehill and we get another game of Malik Willis? Do you think that they kind of loosen the leash a little bit and let him free?
If it's, first of all, no, I'm not starting Malik Willis. And if it's Malik Willis this week, the Titans may not even score because they're going to have to let him throw, and he's not going to be able to throw, and it's going to be a massacre. So, no, I'm not starting Malik Willis.
Yeah, we saw how limited he was. I mean, they barely let him throw the ball. Of course, you say, well, they didn't need to. They're going to need to against Kansas City. It's not going to be pretty. So, no, you cannot start Malik Willis if he goes against Kansas City. And then Monday night, Baltimore going to New Orleans. If you have Lamar Jackson or Mark Andrews, you're pretty happy. If you have Andy Dalton, how are you feeling?
I think you can feel fairly good. Again, not a guy I want to start in one QB league because he just doesn't have a huge ceiling. But in this matchup, in a 2 QB Superflex league, I think he's startable.
Look, here's the thing, is we got fooled a little bit by that big game he had, but he had to have because he turned the ball over and then they fell behind. But otherwise, he's been kind of just game manager, boring Andy Dalton, safe, but no real ceiling. So I think it's a good matchup, but he's, to me, not a guy I want to start in a single quarterback league. I would rather go with a guy like Justin Fields. And then at quarterback / tight end, there's always Taysom Hill. Which Taysom Hill do we get in week 9?
Probably the same Taysom Hill we always get. Look, Mark Ingram injured, so maybe he gets more run out of the backfield, but really, you need him to rush in a touchdown. He's not going to catch a touchdown. He may throw a touchdown, but more than likely, you need him to score on the ground, which he can do. So if you're looking at guys like, Will Dissly that we talked about, or some of these other guys, Cole Kmet, might as well gamble on Taysom Hill. So stream him if you need him.
Yeah, if your only other option at tight end is a guy with no floor, yeah, roll the dice. But look, just don't expect anything from Taysom Hill on a weekly basis, and you won't be disappointed. All right, that's our take on the quarterbacks and tight ends for every game that matters in Week 9. You want to know about wide receivers, running backs too? We got you covered. Check out our Week 9 playlist with start sit advice, trade advice, waiver wire advice, everything you need to help win in fantasy.